In this section, Rauni tells us about her first book, There Is No Death. She talks about mind control and how the CIA tried to classify belief in UFOs as a sign of mental illness, which was opposed by European countries such as Finland.
I just dropped. I thought, gee, I said, oh yeah, I got this information 2 weeks ago. They said, no, the telefax came from Argentina today. I said, I have it in writing. So I went back to Rovaniemi and went to our group, and I said, what am I going to do? And my hands started writing again and said, don't worry, we'll take care of it. I said, okay, fine. Because I didn't dare to deal with these energies because I didn't know what it was. And so I left for Malaysia, for Kuala Lumpur, and in 2 weeks the Swiss ambassadress asked us Red Cross ladies for a smörgåsbord, for a lunch. And there comes a lady sitting next to me saying, I'm Gina. I said, I'm Rauni. And the first sentence she says, would you like to join our group? I said, what group? Well, we're a group of 7 Chinese ladies and we're developing our psychical abilities. I sat there like, don't worry, we'll take care of it. And I joined the group and I continued writing and got instructions, and my writing was once, your book is already written on this level, on the other dimension. Give your hand and give your time. That's when I wrote the book, There Is No Death, in 24 hours, when I counted together all the times. And it's an international bestseller in 6 languages, has sold 170,000, which is enormous for a Finnish book. But I was told in writing it's going to be an international bestseller. Well, I have a friend who is a journalist, and it was interesting that she got engaged. And I said, what can I give you as an engagement present, because you have everything? And she said, give me rights to your book, to your manuscript. And I said, wow, just here, take it. And that's how it was published, with a very, very known publishing company in Finland.
How was it received? Was this new knowledge something that was...
Well, it became, how would I say, the discussion of books that year. It was 1982. And at the same time, it was published in Sweden, because I had some articles in Swedish magazines, interviews, and had mentioned it. So a publishing house from Sweden called me and said, can we have your book? But that was before I had finished it. I said, look, I'm writing my first book and it's not finished. It doesn't matter, we'll take it. It became #1 bestseller in Finland. It became #1 bestseller in Norway, #5 bestseller in Sweden, and then it's also in Danish and Icelandic and Spanish. And a lot of discussion because of my background. I mean, come on, I was Chief Medical Officer of Lapland. I was even
How was it received by your colleagues?
Colleagues didn't actually say much.
They smiled.
I'm sure they talked behind my back. But one psychiatrist had called the Chief Medical Officer of Finland and said something that, she must be crazy or whatever. But I had replaced him. I had been working in the National Board of Health, and for a very short time I had replaced him. So he knew. He said, just read the book. But I heard that it was forbidden in the psychiatric institutions in Finland. Interesting.
Because if we look at Professor Mack, John Mack,
I know him.
the United States,
yes,
and the terrible trouble, he was effectively put on trial.
Yeah.
How did you not get that kind of treatment?
I don't know. I don't know.
What was...
One thing which I think is the difference between Finland and America. In America, they oppose anything of the paranormal. They have their CIA doctors who have been even putting the psychiatric manual for DSM, Diagnostic Manual for Psychiatric Disorders, and they make just about whole paranormal phenomena as a sign of mental illness until 1992. Even telepathy and contact with the energy of the dead was 50% of the diagnosis of schizophrenia. Now, there was so much opposition from Europe that in 1994, in the new Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, #4, they had taken away that and said that UFO contacts and the paranormal are religious and spiritual problems, which they aren't actually either, but it's better than labeling a person schizophrenic. I think there was a lot of pressure from, at least in Europe, our psychiatry professor at the University of Helsinki, who was also European Psychiatric Association's president, said personally to me, he's retired now, Kalle Akte, he said that we are not going to take that diagnostic statistical manual at use in Finland. I said, why not? He said, it doesn't fit into our culture. It doesn't fit into the Scandinavian culture to make normal paranormal phenomena as schizophrenia. But it was induced. We had it. But now we're gone over more to the WHO labeling of diseases. There's a lot of opposition, and I don't think it is a coincidence. Doctors know nothing about healing except those doctors who treat patients with healing. And even Alexis Carrel, 1912, he got a Nobel Prize in medicine. He said that the power of the prayer is as demonstrable as the secretion of the glands. I myself wrote an article in '89 already with 5-6 pages of references in normal school medical research about healing, which is very positive. I was representing Finland at the Nordic chief medical officers meeting in the middle of 70s, and I was very surprised because I was adjutant to our chief medical officer, and they were dealing with paranormal. Chief medical officers of Nordic countries, and he said to me, well, you give the views of Finland. I said, what? Whatever you know. I said, wow. And there I found out that the Swedish, at that time, chief medical officer was a little skeptical. The Danish was also, but Icelandic. He went full with research about that 41% of Icelanders have been claiming to have contact with the energy of the dead. Can you imagine? 41%! And at that time, Diagnostic Statistical Manual said that that's a sign of schizophrenia. So are 41% of Icelanders schizophrenic? No, of course not.
Why Iceland?
Because it's isolated. Today, 260,000 people. And you know, it's easy to sort of do research on them. And the horror...
Is it anything to do with the volcanic activity, energies, different chemicals in the air, things like that?
Could be. I don't know. They call it the island of the sagas. So maybe...
What's that?
Saga, it's like fairy tales or whatever. And maybe when people live in an isolation with nature, like American Indians or the Sami people in northern Scandinavia, they feel the energies much better than we who live in cities. We just don't feel anything. I mean, you know, we're just going like this. And Iceland, I read it in the Finnish medical journal, and I was shocked that an American private company had bought the journals of Icelanders, the sick journals, medical journals of Icelanders, and they want the DNA, you know, information. Now a whole nation is sold to a private company who can then deal with, you know, do whatever with their DNA.
What do you mean by genetic targeting or genetic tracking?
Whatever. I don't know what their agenda is, but I think it's very scary. Very scary.
So let us get on to how you got involved with even talking about mind control. What brought you to that point?
Well, you know, I think I've thought about it myself. I think it's like steps. First was parapsychology, then I got interested in ufology, and then the next was mind control. But it's very dangerous, I've found out, especially in the States, to combine mind control and ufology. Because, of course, there's spaceships. I mean, there's absolutely military, you know, films and evidence, and not only films. I mean, they have alien bodies, and they have done autopsies, etc. in the States, and probably in Russia too. But there's also mind control technology, which makes people think that they have alien contacts. They hypnotize them from remote. And they can see...
How does that work? Can you explain how that works? How they can do that?
I'm not technically, so knowledgeable, but let's put it this way, that through computers, and they can be directed to satellites, and they can be directed right to you.
One of the things everybody has nowadays is a computer.
That's right, but I'm talking about supercomputers, which have at least 180 trillion floating points in a second. In a second, when our brain is only 5,000 bits a second. We're no match to any computer.
What time are you talking about when you say that kind of figure?
This figure was the last one that I read about, and it was about a year ago I found it. But I'm sure NSA, National Security Agency in America, has much faster ones. Because when they give out information to the public, that's 30 to 50 years old. But this was official, source where I got that.
So how do you think that mechanism works in accessing a person?
It shows white vans always parked near you. Neighbors are always involved somehow in surveillance and harassment. That's the routine. And so it can be from neighboring house, if you live in an apartment house, from neighboring house or a neighboring room, from the air, or from wherever, even from satellites. And how can you defend yourself against satellites? You can't. Well, I usually have only two.
Okay.
And number one is there's no death. Man is a mind, not a body. 87% of your brain is water, 70% of your body is water. Even doctors forget that. What holds it together? That's energy. You are an energy field. And when you die, you just leave your body, like in out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences. I've read the first medical article in a Finnish medical journal about near-death experiences in 1983 already. So you are absolutely an energy, and if you believe in Einstein, energy doesn't disappear, it only changes form. So you leave your body and you look at your body, and if you can't come back, you're dead.
You've trained in doing that?
Yes, I'm not trained by anybody, but I train myself. And it was...
You have a nice story about that.
Yes, actually it was in Rovaniemi, it was November, and it was dark. And I thought, well, I'm going to now try, because I had read books that you concentrate your energy from your feet and from your arms towards your heart and your brain. So I concentrated. And all of a sudden I started feeling vibrations in my body from feet up to the head in 5-6 layers. It was just like vibrating. And I thought, this is strange. And then a blackout. And I don't know if it was 1 second or 100th of a second. Blackout. I was floating above my body. In the same position, which was funny because I had my knees up. In the same position and floating towards the ceiling. Of course, I had read about it, out-of-body experiences and how people, experience it. But I was looking down at my body and I thought, hey, wait a minute. I could see that my body's breathing was very slow. I worked as an anesthetist, for instance, so I can count 60 seconds without a clock. So I started counting. And I saw that my physical body was only breathing 10 times a minute when normal is 20 times a minute. And then I got worried and I thought, hey, what's the pulse? So I took the pulse of the physical with the astral body, which was, floating. And I started counting. It was 32 instead of 60, which is normal, when you're resting. Then I really got worried. I thought, hey, am I going to die? Is that body going to die? All my thoughts were in the astral body. Nothing was in the body. It was just like, old clothes. And when I thought, oh, am I going to die? I thought, oh, mother, help me. And my mother lived 800 kilometers down south in Helsinki. And when I said that in my mind, I was in a second in Helsinki at a big room, where I used to grow up. And I saw my mother. And I saw my niece, who was about 5 years old. They were chatting. I couldn't hear what they were saying. I was just like a consciousness there. And I saw my mother was sewing a long dress with hands. And probably a gift to me or something. And then I thought, where is my sister? And all of a sudden, tick, I was at a cocktail party. I was looking. I saw my sister. flirting with a family friend. I looked around. Where was her husband? No place. And then I thought, oh, I want to go home. And immediately, in a second, I was again 800 kilometers in Rovaniemi floating. Now I saw the floating astral body. It was like skim milk, without inside organs, which is interesting, and without sex. They don't, your light body doesn't have sexual organs or inside organs. It's just light. And then I was floating like this and going like this, and I thought, gee, I'm going to get seasick. And then I thought, I better watch out that I don't throw up on this physical body, because then, you know, I'll suffocate. I mean, all the thoughts were in the astral, and there was nothing in the physical. And then I tried, zoom, I went back. Whew, I was cold, I was stiff.
This is because you felt you were going to die.
Well, no, when I was floating, when I came back, I just wanted to get back to the body. I wasn't thinking of death at all. I wasn't, because I was doing astral travel, which of course I had never done before. And then I just went back and fell asleep. And next morning I called my father, my parents in Helsinki, and I said, what was my mother doing at 8 p.m.? Oh, I can't tell you, my dad said, because it's a Christmas gift for you. And I said, it's a long dress with flowers sewn by hand. And he said, how do you know? And I told him the story. And he said, don't ever tell anybody. And of course I went to the Finnish press, you know.